Okay, everybody, welcome to the special council meeting, City of Cross Lake, Thursday, July 6th. It's 5:30. Let's get her started. Who's going to take the wheel here on this? Chip, do you want to, or? No?
If you would, that's what you would prefer. Okay. I asked for these items to be put together. Okay, I'll get the mic turned on now. I asked for these items to be put together, and hopefully everybody's had some chance at some point to read through some of these things. And on the leadership and the duties, I think also there's a couple things I want to add in here. Number one, we ask our fire department to protect and provide protection and care for $2.4 billion worth of property in this community. That's huge. That's larger than any other community in this county. So I think that needs to be brought up front and center. A couple other things, I think a couple of things came to light Wednesday with the false alarms. And we had a false alarm went out on a smoke detector. And there was a number of, because it was a fire call, a number of people responded to it. Probably cost the city in the neighborhood of about $300 for that response, roughly.
We actually had 2 in that day, and it was closer to 900.
Closer to 900 for one day. And they were false alarms. There was false smoke alarms. But they still have to run. And I think people need to, I'm asking for people to take that part into consideration as well.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
So if there's like a fire, notice of a fire alarm, so aren't there particular, firefighters on duty? I mean, don't you have on duty and off duty? So like, I mean, aren't there a few people that are designated to, I'm just curious. I mean, it seems crazy if like so many people respond.
No, there's nobody on duty. We don't have a full-time chief at this time, so we have nobody on duty. Everybody's on duty 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I didn't mean on duty, I mean on call. You know, like there's doctors who are on call, and so if something comes in, they're the first ones contacted.
Like duty crews.
Yeah.
Don't you have duty crews?
We have duty crews at night, but we do not have duty crews during the day because most people have their normal jobs. And if you make them have to respond to calls during the day, then I don't think their employer would let them do that. They want to go all the time. If you're assigning somebody to be on call during the day, you'll have to pay them.
So Aaron, what was your point about false alarms?
Well, my point is, the reason I brought it up is because if we have at least one person, excuse me, full-time, in the days, that person could be the original response and then designate if other people are needed or not, and we could have cut that down if we had the full-time
There was
person.
a fire alarm, a fire call came in.
If they know it's a confirmed fire, that's different. This is an alarm that came in and caused,
I
because
would
it's a
think that
fire
that would
alarm.
automatically activate whoever is there, no?
I don't understand your question.
Well, if an alarm comes in, until somebody goes out to verify to see what's going on, you want reaction. You want people moving, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so,
Unless you see smoke, if it's in a fire alarm from, instead of a person calling it in saying there's a fire, it's actually an alarm from the alarm system in a structure that is calling the alarm company, which calls the dispatch, which calls us. A lot of the real fires are, people see the fire and call it in. Or a homeowner's house is on fire, they will call themselves.
Where were the false alarms? I'm just curious.
Daggett Pine Road? Oh, Dream Island, Dream Island.
But if there was somebody that was full-time, that was designated that they would respond to that call initially, they could call a lot of those off, some of those off, not all of them, nowhere near all of them.
That is correct. We call those nuisance calls. And similar to what Brainerd does, if there's an alarm or a CO alarm or a water flow alarm, they call the chief, they say you want to check it out first, and they go check it out, yeah, you don't need it, or they will say, I'm unavailable, do an all-call. So they monitor what's going on. Obviously, if there's a true fire, people are going to see it, you're going to see smoke, somebody's going to call it in. When you're doing an investigation, it's not as, it's an emergency call, but it's not, you don't need an all-call until it's confirmed.
Okay. So you could cut some of those back. And now, first 6 months of this year, have we spent a lot of money on these false alarms?
Well, we call them nuisance calls, or the
Yeah.
public assist or public service calls, probably close to, I can't give you an accurate number because I couldn't get the spreadsheet to work correctly today, but it was between $10,000 and $13,000.
So far
In
this
payroll,
year?
correct.
So if it holds true for the second half of the year, you could be in that 20,000 range. Okay. You never cancel all of them or call them all off, but you could call several of them off, third of them or more. Okay? But I think the duties kind of speak for themselves, what they do. Keep in mind with Eric retiring, because Eric was the co-emergency manager, now that leaves Chip as the emergency manager. So that's going to add to his duties as well.
Why wouldn't Jake take it over?
It's going to take 2 to 4 years to get Jake trained and up to speed. That's not something you just train on and you've got.
Oh,
There's scenarios you have to run through, you have to go through. It's a long, drawn-out process.
Yeah, I can answer to that. Eric, I think, just had a title from carryover from years in the past. I don't know how much training he actually had. I think it's whether, if I was out of town, he would take it over. Emergency management training takes a long time. You have to have ICS 100, 200, 700, 800, 300, 400, and then all the ICS classes.
well, Jake, we should have been training you for the last 4 years.
It probably wouldn't have been a half bad idea, but the thing of it is, it didn't happen. And some of those classes are not 1 and 2 day classes. They run up to a month long. So it's not something that you can take lightly, sending someone.
You want to comment, Jake, on that? You want to comment on that? Have you been taking classes or anything for emergency management? It's not required?
Will you start now? I mean, is that something you?
I mean,
At this point, I don't know how we could send Jake to it, but for the simple fact that he's going to be down 2 people here. A third of his department is gone.
Sorry. Do you know if he ever took the classes? Oh.
probably attended some of the scenarios.
I'm just hearing this, I'm a little concerned if, if something were to happen to Chip, who would we have? I mean,
No,
oh, okay.
We'd still coordinate, I'd still be here working, it's just that they have the specialized training,
Okay.
it's just like smaller communities such as ourselves calling if we were to have a homicide or something here in town, and calling the BCA to bring their more specialized investigators out
Yeah.
to help us with that, so.
Okay.
okay. The fire chief is also responsible for the annual training requirements, seeing to it that the staff gets through it, that they get it, and they work with it. We just received new call information, I think that's E. And we were just kind of commenting about the number of calls of some of these departments that are around that were listed. But we're at 600, we're at or above many of them. And these are all departments with full-time fire chiefs.
So
Yeah. You said it's E.
he's just going down to E. But
I'm just going down the list right now.
when you get back, I have a follow-up question for item B when you're done.
Oh, for B?
Yeah.
Go for it. What's the,
So emergency manager duties, you think you're just doing that once an incident occurs, but that's not how it works. Could you explain how the planning for a large event?
Yeah, I mean, just like
Goes.
for example, St. Patrick's Day Parade, I send out, I don't know if any of you read it, but it's the emergency operation plan for if there was a big issue and what your role in that would be and how you'd have to convene here. I don't know if anybody read it.
I
But
read
those
it.
are the things that you have to be prepared for just in case something does happen.
Right.
So that takes a lot of time to prepare for that. And then also with, our disasters, or our weather disasters we've had, Mike and I have worked closely to get all the information we need to be able to apply for that funding that we received from the government. There's just a lot of planning that goes along with everything we do.
Chip, didn't you also, over the last couple of years, open up the EOC downstairs during a couple of the storms for the people in the
Yep, so
campground?
we've coordinated with the campground to make sure there's places for those people to have shelter during some weather-related storms. And also coordinated with them on that. And also back when we did COVID, I was working with that in the state regarding what policies we need to put in place regarding the COVID
Was that in
shutdown.
conjunction with the fire department? Because I saw, I was given a tour of the, the disaster center down there, whatever right? In the,
I'm sorry.
uh-huh,
Yeah, downstairs when
Yep.
you had your tour.
so is that kind of in conjunction?
With the police.
I don't know what you're asking, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Was
He
it-
gave her a tour of the EOC downstairs.
Right.
Okay, downstairs is more of a storm shelter
Yeah.
and an EOC. The fire department is the actual second EOC for the county.
Okay.
Yeah. They've got a far more equipped one at the fire department. Okay,
Okay.
let's be frank. Anything else on that?
I had a question. When I was reading through this is just a general question when it says your, part of your responsibility is stocking emergency supplies and equipment. I'm just curious, are we adequately stocked?
To answer that question, I mean, we sometimes, depends on the call. Whenever we start getting low, we just reorder more supplies.
So
It
you're
all
on top
depends,
of
because the
that.
calls aren't consistent, so
Yep.
we try to keep up on everything.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anything else on that topic?
What do you have, wait a second, what do you have on the short-term rentals in here, Chip? I'm looking for it, and I can't find it.
The reason I put that in there, Dave, is because it would fall there for inspections. For this type of inspections, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike and Chip, but I believe that Chip is the only one that's actually certified to do the inspections on these homes. And they do a lot of the different types of inspections and so forth. And I don't know, at one time I heard something about creating exits for some of these places, and you indicated that might come from you as well.
Well, it's just life safety inspections, code violations, things like that. Do you
Has
want me just to go
has the
down this?
county requested that? As a county, the county would be in charge of licensing short-term rentals. Have they requested that? Because they would have to contract with,
Marcia, this is something for the future. If we are going to do this with us, the city, if we're going to enact that ordinance and take it over ourselves, this is something that we have to be prepared to add in and do. That's the gist of why that's there.
Actually, there's federal fire code that should be followed on every structure. And it doesn't have to follow the county, it's a state code for certain things, since we're so.
We're not under the state building code, and I realize we're probably under the
Building
fire
and
code, but
Building code and fire code are two different things.
I realize that. I'm just saying that for the short-term rentals, that's the county's, yeah, that's the
Today,
county's.
you are correct, it is.
Okay.
But I know Dave has wanted to enact it, and that's why I put it on. Okay?
Do you want me to run through this?
Well, maybe, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, the duties is an important thing.
well, okay. Do you want me to, okay.
I want to back up to the first thing you started with, Aaron, and that was about response chip if a fire alarm went or a lift assist or whatever it went. Now, are you saying that you would be the only one to respond to it?
Depending on the situation, if it's a public assistance or lift assist, possibly. If I need more help, then I would page it out for more
Right.
assistance.
Right. But
Isn't that a time
you have to call the
factor?
rest of the guys off.
It's
of
not a
their
time
job,
factor
or-
for a lift assist because it's not a crunch time for a lift assist. They don't have a medical condition, they just need a lift assist. And usually I can help with the police. If they're on duty, they can come help as well. But usually you need two. Sometimes you need more depends on the subject or the individual.
But I think on that, the one part I was talking about, I was specifically talking about fire call, not lift assist and that. We've spent $20,000, $10,000, 10 to 13,000 so far this year.
I have to correct you on that, Aaron. It's not just fire alarms because we've only had maybe 8 or 9. It's the smaller calls.
Smaller calls?
Yes.
Okay,
We call them nuisance calls.
Yeah, thank you. That clarified for me. Okay.
But I think when that call goes out, you're still going to want the guys in the field notified, and you want them kind of in a position to go, no?
When it comes from the alarm company, it's usually you want to go investigate it before you do an all-call. That's the way all fire departments that have full-time do it before they do an all-call. It's how you save money.
Well, okay, but I know very well that when your house is burning down, you don't want to waste too much time.
Right, but you actually had
you
somebody,
don't know-
I understand that, but somebody called it in that saw the fire. That's what I was trying to get to earlier. Usually the person that's house is on fire, they call, then you know it's a confirmed fire. When you have an alarm system calling it in, a lot of the time it is a false alarm,
Yeah.
majority of the time. Because of
So there's
bad
going to be a
batteries.
savings in that, but there's going to be overlap.
However you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Did we get you covered there, Dave, or? Mm-hmm. Okay. But the short-term rental, the reason I brought that up, or put that on there, is if we decide to go with it, then the inspection. But I think also, is an important point that I think has been missed here, is you realize that he goes out and does business inspections and so forth now, especially with businesses that have chemicals in them, things that if there's a fire, they could cause an explosion, or leakage could cause harm to people or persons, whatever. I believe that you do those also, don't you?
Yes, I do those, and then occupancy loads and exits and fire extinguishers and exits that are being blocked by some of our mercantile businesses, or any new businesses like the event centers, all those.
And does that come through planning and zoning, and they say you got to go do an inspection?
They let me know, and then I work with them regarding when the plan gets submitted, then I meet with the builder, and then we go over the plan, and then I make sure that they have the right occupancy and the right exits and everything else.
But that is part of our structure here in the city. You have to do that.
It's a
not
fire
an
code,
elective.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's for commercial buildings. Yeah.
Well, I think it can hit to a home if you've got a home that has somebody that might be handicapped or have special needs.
That's their own, whatever they do inside their own home is whatever they want to do.
It is, okay.
And anything over, I think it's 4,500, is supposed to have a sprinkler system too, but that hasn't gotten pushed through the legislature yet.
Yeah, that got taken care of. Okay. Then, more questions?
So you don't actually do fire investigations, do you? Isn't the fire marshal do that?
The only time we call a duty officer for a fire investigation, I mean, not, the reason we're supposed to call them if there's a fatality, or it looks like it's arson, or if we can't figure out what happened. So we only call them when, under those circumstances. I've had fire investigation classes, and we do the fire investigation.
So when my house burned down.
Yours, we didn't know
fire marshal
exactly
was
what
there.
happened, and it was a total loss, so we called them in to help.
Yeah. 'Cause it could
And I
have
wasn't
been.
there on the initial attack, so. This sheet that you're looking at, the duties, all of you have seen this. Hasn't changed
Yep.
in a year. So I've gone through all this with you prior, so things haven't changed.
Okay. Before I move on from short-term rental, is there any other questions on that topic?
The reason the short-term rental is, if you recall last year during budget talks, we talked about the fire chief handling some of the duties for that, so it would have been like a 60-40 share, I believe, right, Mike? Something like that? Whereas 60% would be fire, 40% would be planning, zoning, or inspections, so that was going to be a share cost for when we discussed it last year to do inspections.
Right, and the reason for my question is we're not doing anything with it right now. So,
2023 call volume year to date, and I think that would be, how are we sitting? I guess that'd be better if you,
Year-to-date, I think we're at 283 as of today. So that's up about 40-something calls from last year, 30-something.
on the report, it shows that it's up 31. So now it's probably up more than that. So we're on par to go higher than what we did last year, which was
Oh, yeah.
just shy of 600 calls last year. When you look at it, it's pretty extensive. We have a lot of calls between the,
I wonder why in February?
I don't know, that was weird.
Like, I mean, almost twice as many.
Yeah, strange.
So I got to ask this question, Chip, and we've talked about it before, but the medical assist, the EMS crews, those calls is a good percentage of your calls.
So the 311, that is an actual medical call. That's not a lift assist, that's not whatever. When you
Right.
go down to public service, under the 500, 553, those would be lift assists with no transport to a hospital, or some other type of medical that did not need to get transported.
So the good majority of those are actual medicals that they get transported and,
The big number, the 311s, the 407 in 2022, those were all medicals that they got transported. We treated and transported.
stabilized. And
part of my concern or caution here is that there's a lot of burnout with the fire department.
That's
With
correct.
the guys. So, and there is an ambulance that responds to it. And, I mean, I coincidentally was at Whitefish Home a couple of weeks ago, and you guys were there. And there was probably 6 of you guys there, I'm guessing. So how do you stop them? How do you call them? How do you probably need 2 with the ambulance. You got 3 or 4 people that could do it.
Well, the problem is the ambulance is not in town, like I've said before, all the time.
Right.
Sometimes we wait 30 to 40 minutes for them. Sometimes we had a heart attack, we had, 9? Jamie? 9 people there, and we were all working on a heart attack. So, I mean, you don't know if it's going to be a heart attack, you don't know if they're going to crash. So, you'd like to have 2 to 3 for sure, but if
Right.
you have a heart attack,
And you get guys on the way, and how do you stop them? And they're there by
that's
the
the
time
problem.
you
Once they
know.
get going
Yeah.
and you're working a medical, you can't tell them to stop. So, obviously, we do cancel some people,
Yeah.
but we don't right away.
A lot of that question and concern is because of the burnout. The guys are leaving their jobs to come. and-
Right.
And
And like I said earlier, and what Mr. Herzog said is if you had a full-time chief, that person can run a lot of the calls during the day where they won't have to go.
Yeah.
They make a determination if
So
you
if
do.
the chief is like a paramedic,
Yeah.
they can go to the calls.
I think the ambulance service, Chip, is something else that should be, I didn't put it in here. Probably should have. How many ambulance attendants do we have here with our ambulance now? 'Cause I know
There's two people there that are there 24 hours a day,
There is two.
but
still
they
two.
cover a big area, so
Yeah.
they're just staged here.
Yeah,
So if they have to go, if the Nisswa or Pine City or Pine River goes, they have to cover Nisswa, they go over to Pequot. So they're all over the place. Or if we have a transport, like Saturday, we had a transport and then we had a broken leg, same time. So we had to go to the broken leg and then we had to wait 35, 40 minutes.
to get them back
Yeah.
and forth.
Yep.
They can't find ambulance people anymore. It's really becoming a problem, and I know that Kelly was talking about going, he was traveling to North Dakota all over the place, trying to recruit people to work for the ambulance service, and they just can't get them. It doesn't matter what they pay. I don't know what the answer is, but we at times would have 4 ambulance people here. Today, we're lucky to have 2.
We've never had 4 ambulance people here.
Haven't we?
No.
Well, I see 4 of them sitting around out there once in a while.
That's during their shift change at 7
Shift
o'clock.
change? Okay. Okay. The call volume, anything else on the call volume? We're on par or to surpass last year.
I think we had
Doesn't mean
16
will.
calls this weekend.
Huh?
16 calls this weekend, I think 14, 16? Yeah, between Friday night and Tuesday,
Between Friday night and
or
Tuesday.
Wednesday morning, Wednesday.
It's a lot of calls. It's a lot of work.
Sure is.
Other questions?
No.
No? Well, those were both for, okay, then included in here is and this is an example, okay? This is not what's being proposed or anything else, is an example of what a fire chief would be, job description would be.
Albertville, is that what you're looking at?
But yeah, the Albertville, yeah. That's just an example of one. I don't think, do we have anything formally written up or no? Okay,
We have my job description as it sits today,
yeah,
which is basically the same thing.
basically the same thing.
It is the same thing.
Okay. So, that you can take a look at, and I think the discussion is today, is going to be one, are we willing to work with a full-time fire chief issue or not? And I think that's, before we go too far, I think that's going to be what the issue is today.
Yep.
Would you also, because this is fire chief, but would you also be the fire marshal?
I am the fire marshal, yes.
Well, it sounded like Dave was indicating that someone different came out, depending on,
Well, that was 6, 8 years ago or something since then.
okay.
No, Keith was I've been chief for 12, so, but Keith was the fire marshal at that time. Fire chief, fire marshal.
Right. Oh, Keith Anderson was the fire marshal, and you just called in a third party just to get some fresh eyes on it?
For which part?
My place.
His house.
Oh, that's the state fire marshal investigation team.
Okay.
That's the state fire marshal. Every city has if they have a fire department, there's a fire marshal.
Okay, I was just confused by that conversation.
Fire marshal does the inspections,
Okay,
not the investigations.
okay. Doesn't the fire chief for Albertville also serve Otsego?
No. Otsego is forming a new public safety department. Will be police and fire in Otsego. They just hired somebody.
Because my niece and nephew both live there, that's so I was talking
Yeah,
about.
so Otsego is covered by Elk River, Big Lake, or Rogers, Albertville, Monticello. So they're starting their own public
They're
safety.
changing it, okay.
Yeah, so they're going to public safety, they're hiring police and fire, and they'll have a public safety director.
Okay, you'll be well covered.
What's that, Marcia? It's not true?
I said I just went online and
Okay.
And it says that Albertville provides fire service to Oswego, whatever, however you say it.
I can pull this up if you'd like.
Maybe not the whole community, but
The RFP went out about 6 months ago. They just hired somebody to start developing and creating their new public safety. No, they have not.
So what are we going to have to do as far as retention for the department, Chip?
Hire more people? I have no idea.
What are we going to have to do to keep them? Do we have to pay them more?
I don't know if that's it. I mean, you can pay them as much as you want, and we still have the same. We've had discussions and meetings and things because some of our firefighters aren't meeting their percentages and things like that. It's just, it's not just here, it's every fire department in the state is dealing with the same problem.
So you'd want to reward the guys that are meeting it?
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, we've talked about that, but I said you can come to the council and ask them on how you want to get paid for bonuses for going to a lot more calls than the other guys, but I'm not going to be the one to do that.
who decides percentages?
Excuse me?
Who decides percentages?
I do, we do, as a group.
As a group, you do.
Well, I don't favor anybody, it's just what is realistic.
I mean, is it the Fire Relief Association, or is it the
No, it's
members of the fire department?
Fire department
'Cause it-
decided, it's not the relief.
My understanding is that it just increased, and we can't get firemen now.
No, the fire call percentages were not increased.
They weren't, okay.
They are exactly the same. It's the EMS calls that we never had a call percentage. We do have a call percentage for that now, so we get more people involved.
So you have what, 20% on 10%?
20%.
15?
20% on fire calls and 10% on EMS, which is very small compared to any other department in the nation. Most are 33.5% on all calls.
I'm going to speculate here, but if you have 28 people in the department,
24.
how many?
24.
24? Are 10 of them loyal and come to all the stuff, and 14 of them are kind of slacking?
Just like any other department, you have 8 people that do a lot, 8 that do average, and 8 that don't do much.
Isn't that
And that's
some,
because they're busy, they have their schedules, they got family, they got sports, they got other activities. So it's just, that's the way people's lives are, it's not, we don't have 24, guys that are going to be totally committed that are going to be there at every call.
No.
We're not going to have 24 Ryan Grubas, we're not going to have, that's just
but
not.
some people have an employer that says no to responding.
Correct.
But
And
I'm
some
kinda-
people don't work in the city during the day either.
How do you reward the ones that show up all the time? And this is maybe an off topic.
That'd be an off topic because I have no idea. If you can come up with a plan, you can tell that to every department in the country and they will reward you. Because the thing is with the percentages, so every firefighter on the department gets an equal amount share of their pension. Okay, so everybody gets the same amount put in for their retirement. But if one person's going to 150 calls and one person's going to 10 calls, everybody's got to pull their weight because then there's a little bit of friction there.
It does seem like there should be some way to reward those who put in more time.
It's kind of different because it's not volunteer, it's a paid fire
It's a paid on
department. They
call.
get
We've
paid.
been paid on call since I joined, 27 years ago.
Well, that is another topic, but I think that should be talked about at some point in time.
We'll
And
get
why
a
do they all
committee.
get the same contribution to their?
As long as they are active and good standing with the fire department and the bylaws and the percentages in place, I make a letter to the Relief Association in Char saying these people are in good standing on the month served for that year.
And there's no gray area, there's no flex. It's either
There used to be a little bit of flex, but now in 2018, the legislature, you have to be, your bylaws and constitution and your SOGs have to be followed to a T, or if you gave money to somebody that retired where it was not in good standing, you have to pay that money back.
So
or the
you've
city
got-
has to pay for it.
You've got good standing, you can't have exceptional standing, though. You can't have different tiers and rewarded differently.
No, you should have been at our meeting, we had that conversation, didn't we? We had different tiers, but how do you pay it? I mean, I can't come to you and say, yeah, so 10 of us did, 75% of the calls, so we should get 10 grand each for doing that, where do you start, I don't know.
I have a quick question. Do we match the state, or does the state match us? Like, we kick in 2,500, the state kicks in 2,500 for the pension,
The state, we put in 1,000 per
or
firefighter.
sorry, 1,000.
And then the state does, it's a percentage. Mike can answer that.
What the state does is every insurance company that insures real estate reports how much of that insurance premium was for fire service. You've heard in the past, it's the 2% premium, whatever. And they pay a fee to the state for that coverage. And so what the state does is they allocate those funds based on actual dollars paid. It's based on, the age of your equipment, the rating of your fire department, the value of your home, and all that kind of stuff. And then they remit those funds back to the city, a portion of that back to the city. So it can change every year. So if you have higher value properties that pay higher insurance premiums for fire coverage, you'd get more money to pay your fire department, and then the city passes those dollars through to the relief.
So on average per year, how much do we kick in to each firefighter?
The city only puts in $24,000,
Okay, sorry.
$1,000 per person.
$1,000 per person.
Does the state then pay more money if you have better equipment?
No.
Because you said something about the,
That all goes into whatever your rating is, and your fire rating is what goes into what you pay for insurance.
Okay.
So indirectly, the answer would be yes.
okay.
It's between 45 and 50,000, right? The fire aid,
About that.
About that.
yeah. So that all goes into the retirement fund.
Correct.
And I don't, when do you get notice on the fire aid for, is that in August?
Yeah, there's estimates out
Yeah.
there. But it's in that $50,000 range. And that's not something we have control over as a city,
No.
what that amount is. That's why it's a pass-through.
And then you divvy up that 50.
That goes to the
It
Relief
goes to the
Association.
Relief Association.
So Chip, right now, my impression is that you feel like you are doing far more work than you're actually being compensated for.
Not necessarily, it's just there's a lot more I could be doing to better the city. There's a lot of things that we're not doing with like public education and pre-planning and community outreach and things like that. We also, when you've discussed having our other officers do things, they have real jobs too,
Right.
that pay their health insurance, pay their job. They don't have time. They want time off too. They don't want to leave work to come to work.
Right.
So they don't have the time to do the administrative side is a lot. And when we get to this next thing that we added to your thing, your pamphlet, your book, or whatever you call that, you'll see there are a lot of departments that have less calls than we do that have full-time chiefs. The administrative side is a lot.
I'd love to see, what exactly those things are, like you said, public education.
I've gone through all this
No, no,
with everybody.
no, I know what you, believe me, I've seen that many times.
Yeah.
But no, I'm talking about the things that you would do in addition,
There's a lot of things we could be doing.
I'd love to see, that laid out, because that would make a difference. We know what would be provided if you were made full-time chief.
Having more community events, more public education awareness, we're working on some wildfire stuff. We're working on a lot of different things. But I'm working on the community wildfire protection plan for the county, but I'm not putting any hours in for that for the department. It's all free. It'll be the first plan the county's ever had.
That's, the county is doing it, right?
No, I'm doing it,
You're doing it for the county.
correct.
Okay. Then you're not, yeah. It's for the county.
County
It's for
compensating
the
you.
city and the county. I've gotten grants, but it's city, but it's for the county. Because it's Crow Wing County, it's a community wildfire protection plan. The county does not have one, which will go into the emergency operation plan of the county, which they've been asking for, the DNR's been asking for. So we're doing that right now.
Seems important.
It's very important.
Be nice not to have our stuff burned down.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I mean, maybe you have presented that before, and I just, maybe it was before I was here, or I haven't been aware of it, but I
I don't have time to do any of that community outreach stuff at this time. I mean, we do Camp Kimchi, we do Camp Knutson, we do Catholic school, the Bible camps, we do the charter school, pub ed,
right.
but there's a lot more we could do.
What are some other things you would like to do? If you
We
given
can
that,
do
given the time?
CPR classes, we can go out and help people put more fire alarms in their rooms, their carbon monoxide. We can do emergency evacuation plans for we've doing one for the Catholic Church right now. We can go all these businesses and help them create emergency evacuation plans or help them with better layout of their storage. And there's so many things. It can go on and on and on.
Okay.
But there's a lot.
I've never heard that discussed, so that's good to know, good information.
Oh, you're looking at me now again, okay.
I thought you were running this show, Aaron.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to be spokesperson a little bit. I would like the discussion to turn. Are we
Do you
going to
want
go
to
with?
look at this real quick that we added? Because I don't know if anybody looked at it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
we can.
okay,
I mean,
go
I had
ahead.
time to look
Yeah.
at, maybe you didn't, you came late. but-
So what this is these are full-time chief departments, some of them have 2 or 3 full-time firefighters, or fire chiefs, or fire marshals, whatever you want to call it. East Bethel has a fire chief, and I can just go through. St. Francis has 3 full-time. Victoria has 3. Waconia, I believe, has 1. Alexandria has 1. Brainerd has 2. Excelsior has multiple. Hamel and Loretto are in the process of combining, so there'll be a fire district now, and they are hiring a full-time chief, and he was the chief in Loretto. International Falls, the reason they're so big is because they have 2 ambulances, so they do transports and everything else, so that's why, but they have 7 or 8. Princeton has a full-time chief, Thief River has 9 full-time. Little Falls has a full-time chief, Pine City full-time chief, Prior Lake has a couple. Zimmerman's had a full-time chief for over 10 years. I don't know why Chisholm's in there. Forest Lake's got a full-time chief. Hugo is in the process right now of hiring a full-time chief. Lake Elmo just hired a full-time chief last year. Albertville's been 5 years. Buffalo just hired theirs about 6 months ago. And then now Otsego, their fire emergency service director, started July 5th.
Yeah, these are communities with full-time fire chiefs, and
Correct.
I understand that with the population they have. But I don't, did you get something from Nisswa? You know, they have like 469 calls. That fire chief gets $500 a month. Pequot Lakes gets $5,200 a year, which would be less than $500 a month. Crosby's $1,000 a month. And you can't say Nisswa's right in there at 469 calls. So I'm wondering, you know, why we're not, why can they make it at $500 a month, 469 calls, and we seem to not be able to do it?
What do you mean not be able to do it? What do you mean?
Well, you're wanting to be a full-time fire chief.
He's
and-
also not the emergency manager. I mean, that's your opinion. You can have your own opinion. You can look at their fire department, look at our fire department. I mean, it's all up to perception of how we run our department. That's all up to you.
If we ignore education, the public education, I'm assuming that they probably don't do that for the
I don't know
$500 a month.
I don't know what their model is. I don't know what they do over there. I can't
Yeah.
answer that for them.
Well, as a former educator, you know, I actually think that public education is really important. I mean, it ultimately saves lives. That's just my.
What was the other one that you talked about, Crosby?
Yeah, they were $1,000 a month.
You know how many calls
But
did they
that
run?
wasn't, they don't have EMRs, I don't think.
No, they don't.
So
Do you
I
know how
kind
many-
of,
How many calls did they run?
I thought they said 3 to 4 calls a month.
They ran 46 calls last year.
Well, that'd be about it,
Yeah,
right?
they ran 600.
I'm saying they're not doing EMRs, they're doing just fire,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So who
But-
does
but
their
we run-
EMRs?
But
That doesn't make sense.
Nisswa's
You
469,
gotta-
that's
Yep.
right in there, so.
They're at 469, 100 less than us, yep,
And he's making 500,
whatever.
yeah. Well, I'm just.
He doesn't do the
comparison.
stuff I do
We need to
either.
compare the area communities too.
That's
So
fine.
Thief River, Chip, you said, I believe,
They're,
9?
they have 9, but that, I wouldn't compare them. Yeah, they have 9 full-time firefighters,
Firefighters, not fire chiefs.
and 2 fire chiefs.
Okay, well, that's why,
Well, they actually do, Marcia, they have 2 fire chiefs, they're called co-fire chiefs, it's really weird. I mean, I'm just saying, you guys make the decision. I do a lot of work here. I just don't want, when I'm trying to set it up for the future, and we're not, it doesn't look like we're going backwards. And Marcia, I understand that you want to compare it to people, but it's like, you have to go see how their departments run and compare it to how we're run, and how our firefighters do things and participate. I don't know what they do over there, so I can't answer for them.
I'm just getting facts.
That's fine. I got facts right here of how many full-time chiefs there are out there, and it all depends on what you all want. That's, it's not up to me.
but so can a community have 2 full-time chiefs?
Thief River did. It's called co-chiefs, but
How'd it go? Or do you know?
I don't know what's going on up there, but
I would guess one runs the
one,
the operation, and the other one does
it's
the
not
education.
that's not really a conversation piece there.
You'll have it,
You you can have an assistant chief, or a deputy chief, or a battalion chief, or an ops chief.
Well, basically today we're just making a decision about whether we want a full-time fire chief. We're not discussing
Yeah.
salary, we're not
Right.
discussing any
No.
of that.
The other one that I forgot about is Detroit Lakes just hired a full-time chief.
I didn't look at Detroit.
Yeah, I know, I forgot.
Then,
Where my concern or caution or hesitance is, we have to invest in the departments. The police is next, I mean, we got to take a look at it. It's just what's the smartest way to do it. And once you do something, it's not real easy to backtrack and go backwards, so.
There's another one, Cambridge has full-time chief, they ran 391 calls.
I think one of the things that a fire chief would give us is a better level of consistency on what happens and what direction we grow into. And we could control that and work with that easier, both on a financial and every other aspect. So I think we would benefit, I believe we would benefit from it,
Well,
especially in the long term, because then he can start getting somebody ready to take his job, because he's indicated he doesn't have that many years left.
Well, Chip, say we did make you full-time fire chief, and then we did take on, doing the ordinances for short-term rentals, would you be willing to take that on as well?
Yeah, was the plan originally.
Right.
That's where the salary was going to be split.
well, when I went online, I looked up Albertville's fire department budget was $720,524 for '22. Ours was $1,193,518.
That's because we bought a truck.
And if we deduct
If you
that,
take out our capital outlay, we're at what?
I don't know if they had their capital outlay in there either, so I don't know.
Yeah, you got to do apples to apples. You got to find out if you have capital in there or not. It's
Well, I'm
your
trying to
operating
do
budget
apples
versus
to
your capital
apples, but
budget.
you're not.
We're pretty set with our equipment right now, right? Our
Yep.
Trucks, yeah.
Out into 2030 somewhere. 32, I think it was,
35.
35.
No, yeah, 35.
Yeah, and you have the next one coming later this summer, early fall.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk salary now, we're just going to talk concept?
Well,
Do
I
we
think
wanna
we
do it?
need to discuss salary a little bit, whether we sit down and we do have some kind of a study done, have something done to create it,
discussion.
what? I mean, but right now, I think the first part of it, Dave, is are we going to have a full-time fire chief or not? That's the question that needs to be answered today.
Chip, is it a union position? Because you had indicated no.
No, it's not.
But the position will be benefited.
Oh, yeah. I could apply for benefits right now.
Pardon?
I can apply for benefits right now if I really
Right.
wanted to.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
not in there.
Because I mean, even when I mean,
I'm
I.
just trying to get a picture of
Right.
what is,
I
what
mean,
are, what's
you-
it gonna
You
cost.
see I'm sure, Marcia, have you seen like my timesheet, and I'm missing hours. I mean, I still do a lot of stuff on a voluntary basis. And that's not even accurate.
Can we switch gears for just a second? The last item in your packet it's called the mini summary report, and that's right off the Minnesota Department of Revenue's website. And periodically throughout the year, there's basically 3 reporting dates. There's a preliminary assessment where county auditors certify to the state, here's what our county is worth by taxing jurisdiction. So what I've done is the first page that I just handed out, you already have. That's Crow Wing County. Crow Wing County's taxable market value on the preliminary mini assessment for the assessment year 2023 is just under $19 billion. Of that total, Cross Lake represents the highest portion of it at 12.66% or $2.4 billion. Everyone else is quite a bit less than that. I've highlighted Baxter and Brainerd and Cross Lake. I heard Nisswa come up. Nisswa is half the value of what Cross Lake is, less than half. All the other ones are listed there too. On the back side of that page are most of the communities that show up on this sheet that Chip provided us late in the day. I found most of them, not all of them report data timely. So I grabbed the ones that I had ready access to data. So those are facts, certified by the Minnesota Department of Revenue, and they're in agreement with the county records for each of those respective counties. Some of them stand out quite a bit, like East Bethel, 1.819, and if you look at East Bethel, they're in Anoka County, and so they had 923 calls. So you can look at it that way. Yet St. Francis, Carver, Alexandria is close to Cross Lake. And interestingly, so is Waconia. Those appear to be the 2 closest ones. Now we can argue population, we can argue value, and whatever metric you want, but this is the value of the service area those departments are serving, whether they're paid on call, full-time, they have a chief or they don't have a chief. Now, Chip, these are the ones that have chiefs, correct? And that's changing, so that's just information for you. And if we go to the second to the last page in your packet, everyone wants to talk about what does a full-time chief cost. Now, about a year ago, there was data available on the League of Minnesota Cities website when cities report salary data. That's not what this represents. When I looked at that data, I didn't feel comfortable that I could get a good representative sample that matched up with the communities we're comparing ourselves here to, because they all report data at different times. So what I did is I went back to a study the city paid for a few years ago for a comparable position, and we had a fire chief in that position, or a pay grade for a fire chief. And so I rolled that forward 2 different ways, you basically get the same answer, just a year's difference, to try to get a feel for what a range would be. So whatever method you use, whether you use an outside consultant, which this data represents, this is actually rolled forward at a lower rate than what was applied to other departments within the city, to try to get an idea what that would cost for a full-time position or a range. And that's what this represents, right, wrong, or indifferent. If you have a better way of doing it, I'd sure like to know. But it's interesting to note that when I compared this to data that I was able to find statewide data a year ago, these numbers are low compared to that. They were low by about $6,000 to $14,000, depending on which group you looked at.
So you're looking at this one, Mike.
Yep, that's the second to the
What
last
is the
page.
numbers on the left side?
That would be a
represent?
step. That
Oh,
would be like,
steps, okay.
what year? Now, this council has taken an approach, do we want steps and years, or do we just want a person to say, we're gonna pay person X this much, and next year they're gonna pay them that? That's really up to the council, but I wanted, because we're talking about this, a position, we need to figure out, if you're gonna go that way, what that might cost and what it potentially could look like.
So you got the duties on your list in here. And it's pretty extensive.
Well, to that wage, you can add, what, 35, 40% for benefits? So
We have
look
that
at that
problem.
too.
We have that problem now. They're just not being exercised. They're available, but not exercised.
Why is that?
I can't answer that question. Chip would have to answer that. Well, for benefits means insurance.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah,
Why am I not? Because it hasn't been offered by the city.
right. Brad Person confirmed you're eligible for it though at a prior meeting,
Correct.
based on
I'm
hours.
sorry, I didn't hear you, Mike. What-
Brad Person had confirmed that at a prior meeting, that he is eligible for benefits, should he choose to take them. He hasn't pressed the issue. If he does, we'll lose, in my opinion.
But the question was, is it 35 or 40% additional to what the wage is about roughly what the
About, yep.
package is?
I mean, this group needs to decide if you want to go that path or not. You know, and that's really up to you folks. If you want to move to a full-time position or not, or you want to move forward, or you want to stay put or move backwards, it's really up to the council.
I think you have to remember, if we do go the short-term rental, I'm not sure if that's the direction you're gonna go. That, I know some of you want it, some of you don't. I think it'd be a good idea, because it'd bring money, we talked about it last year, it'd bring money to the city, which would offset the position.
Right.
Marcia, why don't you like that?
I'm hoping that the county does a good job, and if we're gonna have a presentation on how you exactly complain to the county at the city council
What
meeting
about
next
life
week.
safety issues?
What?
County
Life
does-
safety doesn't matter, does it? Shouldn't it matter?
The county has to care.
They
The
don't.
county is licensing. They need
Right,
to
but
do
they
it.
don't do
They need to
life-
contract out for it.
Understand that. They don't do life safety inspections. When they had their original meeting on short-term rentals and doing the licensing, they did not let any of us fire chiefs talk at the meeting for life safety. They did
And they're not
wanna
going
hear
to do it.
They're not going to.
And they said they're not
They
going
said
to.
they're not going to.
But they're the licensing agent,
Right now, that is correct.
yes.
I personally would rather that we have our own ordinance, we have better control.
And Marcia, I can take you out to calls that we've been to where there is no egress, no working fire alarms. That's not a good thing. Life safety is huge. People are trying to make money, shoving as many people as they can in a house wherever they want to sit or sleep. And someday something's gonna happen. I can guarantee it.
But they'll go after the county.
No, but if it happens in our city, it's still,
They'll go after you.
You're correct.
yeah.
We'll go after everybody. Well, Jackson, what do you want to do?
What do I want to do? Don't word it that way. It's what do we want to do?
So just to clarify, the county does not perform any life safety inspection work. Okay.
That is correct.
Well, I just think, in addition to that, it is a revenue maker if we
I wouldn't count on that.
It's not going to be a maker. but
No,
hopefully
it's
it would
not.
come
It's
close.
not. Nope,
Well, that's what I mean.
it's
you
not.
know.
Yeah.
That are internal
And
costs.
I guess we're not talking about short-term rentals, deciding that right now. We're talking about the full-time fire chief.
But
and
it is kind of related.
It is, but that's not our decision tonight.
If down the line we're going to do that, then that's something we need to consider in regards to making it a full-time position.
So, Chip,
That's what was discussed last year.
yeah, this is kind of a sensitive, I don't want to twang any nerves here, but I got to ask it. If it is a full-time position and you're dedicated to the city, what are you going to do with your training company? Continue?
Continue. I work from 6 a.m. till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and those guys can attest to that, because most of my stuff is at night. And once I get my 40 hours in,
Yeah. Well, you can do it, yeah.
And it also stabilizes us when we get to the budget time, and we have known costs sitting in front of us.
But I'm sorry, can you clarify that?
It helps stabilize the budget because we have known costs. Right now, his salary, the way we're paying him today, it can be $3,000 this month, it can be $10,000 next month.
So
it's-
this is an important conversation, but I think how we're going to compensate and look at the department is a pretty important conversation that we got to have. And I guess the budget is going to fall where the budget falls. We're just going to have to budget.
So in March, the training, the fire chief had 152 hours, plus his calls came to 5,947.97. In April, his fire chief duties, he was paid $4,230, and with calls and it doesn't really matter, the calls and the training, but his check was $7,523. And in May, he had, for fire chief duties, 95 hours, and it was $2,870. And in June, he had a little shy of 90 hours, and it was, the fire chief duties was $2,690. And that doesn't include the calls and the training. So we
one
are
thing I'd
spending
like to
some money.
clarify there is there is some mileage pay in there too, and it was not all training. It was based on administrative hours, training hours, call hours. So don't think I was doing 150 hours of training, because I was not.
But your mileage, you wouldn't be getting
$30.
$30.
$461 in March. And March, remember, we had St.
That's,
Patrick's.
that's in fire training? Is that in fire?
No, that's administrative emergency management. We're going to,
Okay.
we had meetings that I had to go to and training down in the cities.
I'm just
The other thing
saying.
is March, we had the St. Patrick's Day Parade, getting prepared for that, being there for all that day. So, I mean, there's justification to all this stuff. It's all right there on the timesheet.
Can I just express my opinion right now?
Sure.
And that is just that I think that we can't undervalue or underemphasize the importance of having our community safe. And I don't think we can emphasize how important it is to have a person in control who is committed, feels, I don't know, properly compensated and respected. And I just think I get the impression that Chip sincerely would like to not only expand, his role, but, the influence of the fire department on our community. And I think that could be a positive. That's just the impression that I am getting. That's the impression that I have. And as Aaron said, it might, stabilize the budget. We know exactly what we're paying. We haven't talked about salary. Hopefully Chip will be reasonable if given the opportunity to serve full-time. But I just feel like, it would help bring the community together a bit if we could endorse this. I've had lots of different thoughts about this, but just sitting here right now, this is how I feel.
I think salary is a very important part. If we decide tonight where we go, if we go back to a stipend idea, or if we go forward to a full-time fire chief. If I recall from a previous meeting, we offered you full-time at 62.5, and we got that look right there. So, just an idea. Right now, personally, I'm at that 62.5. I'm not really willing to go any further than that. So that's where I'm personally at right now. I am thankful for all the stuff you do, Chip, and what you've done and continue to do, but that's where I am at personally.
For a full-time fire chief, 62.5?
Right, if we go that route, that's where I would stay.
Can I make a comment? The Cass Lake Fire Chief makes 60,000.
I'm not, everybody knows, I'm not willing or not ready to support a full-time fire chief. I'm just not.
Marcia, at what point would you be?
I don't know that I would be in support of it, ever, probably.
How the population grows?
Well, you know, I'm talking about now. I mean, if we get to be 25,000 population, I would hope, you know, change is constant, but right now, I'm not for a full-time fire chief, not at all.
Well, I want to support the fire department 100%. I'm just not sure how to do that. Don't start crying, Marcia.
Okay, guys.
Tap the button on the side. All right, there you go.
You know, part of me wants to ask you, how long are you going to stick around for, Chip? But I realize that's not a fair question to ask, right? And what is the succession? And, you know, those are the things that are,
I mean, there's a couple of people that are in ready, but they don't have the time to do everything that I do. And you can have, we have 2 firefighters here. They can come up and talk if you want them to.
yeah.
And just to piggyback off Dave's comment, I don't think that when I say I'm not ready for a full-time fire chief yet, that doesn't mean I'm not supporting the department. I support the department 110%. It's just I'm thinking of it in a different manner than, you know, just because I don't support a full-time fire chief does not mean I don't support the fire department. I just want to be clear on that topic.
Yeah, me too. I'm supporting the fire department. I don't believe that a full-time fire chief is a good move.
Well, what are some other ways we could support the fire department other than providing them with a full-time chief? Just
Personally, I'd like to see some stuff go a different way. If we could pay the fire guys more to be fully trained paramedics, I would go for that in a heartbeat.
Well, or have a succession, Chip, like a second in command or something.
I have 2 assistant fire chiefs, and I have 5 captains right now.
And what is their compensation? Just the normal?
I think it's $300 and $225 a month.
So we had a public safety committee that made a recommendation. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, Mr. Council Herzog could.
Yeah.
We made,
that seems very,
we made, both the Public Safety Commission and the Fire Chiefs Working Group suggested they go with a full-time chief. That's where their recommendation was.
Yes, okay, now I've
Yeah.
got what the question,
Seth, would you
The Public
mind coming
Safety
up and
Commission
giving us
did.
your thoughts?
did support it.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, that's fine, I can try to answer some questions. I've been with the department, going on 20 years now, so. Fire away.
I hate to, you know, I mean, you know, I'm candid me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to ask you those questions now, but a second in command or compensation for the,
Quite frankly, I'm a captain on the department. I have been for 5 years, and I don't even know what the pay is. I don't even look at the stuff, so.
and you're
Captains,
dedicated and you do it because of the community. I mean,
I
it's-
probably am in the top 3 for call percentages on the
5.
department, and have been since I've started, so.
how would having a full-time fire chief affect you?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, working a full-time job, 2 kids, just like everybody else in the department, we just don't have a lot of time to do extra, you know, than what we're already doing. So, I don't know who could fill that gap in, I guess, is what I'm getting at, so.
So we're looking at hiring administrative assistant for the police. Could that person take on some of the paperwork or duties of the fire chief or the fire department?
That would be a question for my chief.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they be shared?
Yeah.
I'd rather have one for one and one for the other. It's gonna get pulled back and forth. It's gonna
So
be
then
on
why
you
wouldn't you
this
just hire a fire chief to do the work?
I,
Why pay somebody 30, 40 grand to do what I'm already doing?
Well, it would alleviate your workload.
Right.
yeah. I think we should go 50/50 if we're going on, if we're going to hire that assistant, it should be 50/50. 50% of the time the fire and 50% police.
No, Marcia, I think that would be really,
Brutal.
yeah.
All they have to do, it's supposed to be
I know, but Marcia, you know, sometimes one might have a bigger load than the other. They might both have really heavy load at the same time. I mean, I think that would be really.
can't they get together and schedule?
Jake's already gonna be down an officer. Jake's gonna need all the help he can get in the office.
I think that just would be really difficult.
Is there a different title, like emergency management something, or is there a title that would blanket?
What do you mean?
Both?
What do you mean?
Do you need to carry over to the police at all?
Do I?
Is there any benefit to that?
Unless you do a public safety director, but I don't know anything about police, so.
Isn't that how that started, that administrative assistant was going to be half-time police and half-time fire?
I don't think so.
That's how it
It was
started.
never discussed to be
It's
helping
proposed
me.
as
I know they were
full-time
gonna talk
police.
about helping Shar. That was the original. Not helping me, because the learning curve in you have to be a firefighter to
Well, and
understand
you're
what we're doing.
in 2 different buildings.
Correct.
And I also know some of these administrative assistants that have been pulled in those directions, and most of them end up quitting within a few years. Because they have 4 different bosses.
Right.
Asking them to do different things, and each boss is fighting over them, because they all need them at the same time,
Yep.
and they don't like it. I know
Right.
some that have been pulled into doing public utility billing.
So does any fire chief have an administrative assistant? Or are you saying, is that just not the norm?
Brainerd has a full-time administrative assistant. Most do, most bigger departments do, that do inspections.
And I know you're not
And do-
full-time,
And do billing for certain things.
right?
Like
Yeah, I know
Brainerd
you're,
has a lot of things in their ordinance that they bill for.
okay.
From having, burn piles, you gotta get a permit, to a lot of different things.
And I know you're opposed to it, but why would you be opposed to having somebody lighten your load a little bit?
Because I do our calls after the call.
Okay,
All my stuff is, the learning curve between, if they may have somebody that's already been doing it for a while, I think.
okay,
If you don't know the fire and the image trend and the infras reporting, that's
Okay.
that's a lot of time. And I'm gonna want, sometimes I need that information right now. I just don't think I think we'll be pulling at it all the time, saying, hey, I need you over here, and then he'll be, well, I gotta get caught up on
right,
this.
that's, right.
With all your calls and data entry and all that stuff, it'll be,
Well, something where that person could help out though is like the permitting for the short-term rental or inspections or follow-up billing or something.
yeah.
I mean,
That's what we're doing, that's what we're doing
That's-
over here with
that's
this
what-
gal.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
if
what
he's gonna
she's
be,
doing.
I
Yeah.
mean, there could be some overlap there on that stage. If you're gonna do
Yeah,
inspections.
we have
and there's
talked
billing
about
for it.
if we decide to do inspections,
Yeah.
if the city decides to do it, he'd be responsible for the safety part of it, and if we hired an administrative assistant, they would be responsible for doing the initial sign-up and the yearly renewals and stuff like that, just that.
You gotta remember, your short-term rental can be done all online.
Right.
I've seen it, I've done it, I've looked at it, I've
You Still have to have somebody.
nothing to do with that. You don't
I've
even
seen
need
a program too that does it all online, yeah.
Where are you at, Dave?
I'm not opposed, I'm just nervous about it, because what's next and how deep is it gonna run?
Well, I
The
mean,
model's hard because like you were trying to, how do you get the other firefighters so they don't get burnt out? The model's, it's
That's
so
where I'm
hard.
at.
We've been talking about it, we're trying to figure it out. It's just hard. And why we put the 10% on the call percentage on the EMS calls is to get more people involved, to take the pressure off the guys that are going to all the calls.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there's a percentage of the guys that are more available than other ones. I mean,
They just make themselves more available. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, some people are busy, some people
Right.
work out of town,
Yeah.
you know?
well, I support the concept of the community education and the schools and getting out in the community and doing that. I support that.
Are you done? Are you gonna keep going?
No, go ahead.
Aaron, did you say there was an issue of hiring ambulance service? Because I've always thought it'd be nice to pay Northern Memorial to house a second ambulance in Cross Lake. I always thought that would be a slam dunk.
That would be about $800,000.
Yeah, up north of us a ways, they actually have their own ambulance in an area.
Okay.
And they actually charge separate tax to all the property owners, and it's $1 million a year.
So how much should we get charged now?
He's talking about Longville. Longville increased this year to I think it's 863, and it's on their tax. It's like a taxing district for their ambulance service. We pay them
$1,000 a month, $1,100
$1,100
something like
bucks
that.
a month.
Yeah,
and we give them a
Nuts.
place to stay.
but yeah, it's not dedicated to Cross Lake.
Correct. I mean, even if we got a second one that wasn't dedicated towards Cross Lake.
Then it would be $800,000.
So it jumped from $1,000 a month to $800,000 a year just to get two.
Correct.
But you see, there's value having them here because we're centrally located in their service area.
Correct.
So for that benefit, to keep them here, we're paying $1,100 a month. That's a pretty good deal.
Correct.
A
It's just
little
why.
history, they were thinking about moving over to Ideal and not being here. So that's why we added on and made better quarters for them so they would stay here.
Why does it jump so much from 1 to 2?
Because right now, they have a service, if you want a dedicated service to Cross
I
Lake,
don't want a dedicated service just to house a second ambulance.
you'd have to pay the payroll. And the next problem is trying to find the people to.
Or North
work
would
there.
have to say, we need more people. It'd have
Correct.
to be
We would
a-
have to pay the salaries because they don't feel they need a second ambulance here.
Okay.
good question.
But keep in mind, that's why we have,
Or you can go big.
These guys
And we can have our own
responding to
ambulance
these-
service. You know all about that, Dave.
but keep in mind. that
Remember those
medical-
days?
I wasn't here then.
Yeah, they used to be so simple. There'd be a dog riding in the front seat of the ambulance, but it was always there. Or a turkey, or who knows what. Times have changed.
I support the whole idea of growing the department and all of that. It's just I am not 100% ready for a full-time fire chief yet. Like I said, I thank you for everything you do and all the stuff that you do for our community. It's just I am not 100% there quite yet at the tune of $94,433 before
But
we.
Jackson, he's already there now.
I know.
Just the compensation.
I get it. I get it.
And, 94,000 is a big jump from the 62.5 we were offering. I mean,
It is a big jump.
You could have a third party come in and tell you what you should pay. You'll probably get a higher number. You'll probably get a bigger number than you're
Than we're looking at. but
looking at.
It would be an option.
Just so you know, the range in the cities for those, some of those that you see in there is between 110 and 160.
if we got an assistant, which you don't seem that inclined to want, but really, if that's what we decided, that's
Right, but if you're going to pay it, what I'm doing now,
that's my point.
and then
is-
you add on to that, why don't you just have a full-time chief? I don't,
Right.
that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
I think one step at a time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the chief's position.
No, I said instead, I meant instead of, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but then when the time comes, then we talk about and help with the growth. Because that assistant would also do a lot of work with education, fire education, a lot of that end of it.
But if we make a full-time fire chief, we're trying to avoid hiring another assistant.
Well, it's down the road.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a union position. What happens if it doesn't work out, Chip? How do we end it? If something happens in a year and a half or 3 years from now?
And you don't want it anymore?
Yeah.
You have to figure out, I mean, whatever, that's your choice, not mine. I mean, do you like,
Well,
the-
I
you
don't know
want
if
to,
you
do you want,
can't,
well, there's other options. I mean, you know that I'm working the hours that I am. I'm
Right.
doing 30 hours a week, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other options, like Mike said, I can go and get benefits right now if I wanted to. I can go to the league and say, hey, last 4 years I've been doing this, and this many hours, and it's documented. I should be getting health insurance. You can give all the fire department members health insurance.
We can?
That would be an option.
Yeah, that'd
They would love that, some of them.
be expensive.
Very expensive.
You already got it.
You're gonna tax people right out of Cross Lake.
We already are taxed, I mean, I can't get new firefighters because there's nowhere for them to live, so that's the other problem we have, is recruitment and retention, and we've had some issues with some meetings that haven't gone very well that everybody has seen, so our recruitment's not doing very well.
Well, let's go back to the original question.
So nobody can afford to live in Cross Lake, and we want to raise taxes another $150,000 to cover a full-time fire chief.
Well, but there's a bigger story than that, Marcia. You know, the reason they can't do it is because the values are so high. Hence the taxes, you know, I mean.
It has
It's not
nothing to
because we
do
don't
with the
have
fire
housing
chief,
here,
I
it's
can
just because
guarantee you
it's
that.
expensive housing.
Chip, can I ask you, like, I hope you don't think this is an inappropriate question, but it seems to me that you don't seem particularly happy sometimes in meetings. And I'm wondering if you were made a full-time chief, if that attitude might, adjust.
I think what's frustrating to me is we've talked about this for 2.5, 3 years. We've gone through all the data for the last 2 or 3 years. All the different meeting groups have told the same story, and we haven't gotten anywhere.
Well, I've only been here 6
I know,
months, and I'm
but
already frustrated.
Just like,
so-
discussion of the short-term rentals, if we ever get that in, everybody forgot about that, go hire somebody else to do the inspections. Well, we've talked about this for time, and like Jory said, there's a lot of things that just don't get done, and, whether you decrease my pay or put me on health insurance, it doesn't matter. I'm just looking down the road, because when I leave, like Seth said, I don't know how the department's gonna be run. I mean, it's just, that's the way it is.
You didn't really answer my question.
I'm not gonna
Is he
answer it
going to
that way.
smile more if he gets a full-time
Well, I'm
position?
just
Well,
asking.
I don't know. I mean, I just, I do a lot. I'm tired. Our fire department's tired.
But you'll still be doing the same amount of work.
Yeah, I'll be doing more, probably.
Well, but, I mean, I would like
I
to.
already, to be honest with you, I already am full-time.
Right.
I already put the hours in.
I'd just
mean,
like to feel that you're,
I have a feeling, and I, don't get me wrong, I mean, you guys might feel the same way. You guys, in our department's eyes, you guys don't support us, right? Am I right? You
We
do not
don't?
support the fire department. So that's the way we feel,
well,
and it's frustrating.
can you give me some example? I mean,
I go to the last meeting, I
I'm new
don't
here,
know.
so I don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
tell me why.
I mean, when did y'all pick up this packet?
I came in 2 days ago, it wasn't ready, I just got it this day, and I was in yesterday and I never got the packet.
Whatever you decide, I'll be happy with. I'm gonna do the same thing I always do because I'm passionate about the fire department, so that's just the way I am.
But you see, there's nothing new in the packet that you haven't already
This
been
is all the same
exposed to
stuff.
or been talked to. This is a formal presentation to try to force a decision, and there's, no, I don't want it, I could never support it, to, I'm looking towards the future and want to move forward and see the growth, to, wow, I'm getting sticker shock because I don't think the value is what we're seeing in
It's
the
just a
market.
long-term commitment is where I am.
And it's a long-term commitment, and,
Yeah.
and do you want to be leading edge and make a commitment and show people that we're doing the right thing and here's why? Or do you want to say, well, we're only 2,500 and we should be like Crosby? Well, I don't think any of us want to be like Crosby. We talk about, well, our taxes are too high. Well, our taxes are high because we have high values. We have one of the lowest local rates around. That's true. We looked at, a few years ago, we looked at a name brand gas station in Minnetonka, same value, and a similar one actually David Drown did this for us, and the same one in Cross Lake. And the taxes paid here were half. So the taxes, we were trying to illustrate for similarly valued property, the taxes aren't the issue or the ability to pay them. The issue is the value. Not everyone can afford Lakeshore. Very expensive.
When I came on to the Planning Commission, 2011, we have gone backwards on staff within the city. We have fewer staff today than we did back then in 2011. So I think looking at it from that perspective, it's not like we're talking about 2 people. We're not talking a ton of stuff, and I think it's time for us to move on, to do it.
I got a comment about the firemen don't feel appreciated, because there's a few of you guys here. In the last 3 years, we built a new fire hall, you got trucks, you got equipment, you have been supported. I know that there's been some conflict going on all along it, but I think if you look around, we do support you. And that's clear. So I don't know what's going on other than us bickering back and forth all the time. But the support is there, and if you can't see it, I don't understand that. So, that's all.
Well, where are we at?
Well, I'm gonna support it. I think we should have a little conversation about the wages and go over that job description very carefully, see what's included in it.
Okay. But you're in agreement with the full-time fire chief?
Well, he's full-time now.
Yeah. Then Dave, I'll make that motion that we formally have a full-time fire chief and we appoint Chip Lohmeter to that position.
I'll second that.
And we'll add to that the job description and the wage or the salary, we need to talk about soon, but we need to go over that.
I agree. When we're done with that, then I think we need to direct Mike to put together some kind of a survey plan, something that maybe goes beyond what we got in here.
Well, it's gonna be right there, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
The job description is, I just want to be careful with that, short term or.
Yeah, that, you don't have short-term in place, so that has to be added later.
Right, but I think we could recover some funds with that and inspections. That's, as long as it's included in your duties, it's not going to be something added later.
Yep, duties assigned.
Yeah.
What I've presented as a sample is likely going to be too low. If we look at an outside person, there are companies that would come in and say, based on what you're doing and the things that the governing board is asking this position to do, here's what we're seeing and where you should be at. One thing that's interesting is you can say, well, it's just a fire chief, you do fire stuff. A lot of people don't know what a fire chief does. They think, well, when the bell rings, they go out and squirt water on a fire, but that's not what a fire chief does. There's a lot more to that, and so part of it is education. And personally, I think there's community support for your motion. I don't know that I'm gonna come up with the lower range on here. My fear is, I think this is gonna be fairly close. It's actually probably low, based on the experience and what you're asking this individual to do. If you want to, we could talk with some of our consultants and say, hey, can you take a look at this and tell us what you think? If you want to do that, we can do that. That'd be a separate motion.
I am more interested in, as you say, Chip, you're setting this up for the next person, and the next person, we don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. You have shown that you've got commitment. You put time in. You've proven that. So,
I think we all can agree to that.
yeah.
For sure, 110%.
But, with the carryover and the Passover, it's gonna be something that we gotta look at.
You would probably have to open that up to an outside person, depending on what happens and what timing that would be. I mean, we have people that
Open
are.
it up for replacements, you mean?
Yeah,
or-
if that, depending on timing, depending on where everybody's at on the department, on what their lifestyle or their job they currently hold.
Right.
Whether it's worth the value of them to transition to the full-time if that were the case.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people that are interested in it that are outside of our department.
Okay, so go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries 3-2? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Now what do you do?
No,
Now you gotta
Welcome
come-
any input from the public
gotta
at
have
any
a-
time.
Dave, one thing I forgot to put in there is effective date.
You gotta wait till you get a salary.
Would it be effective today?
No, you have to wait till you have a salary.
You need, so do you need to go?
You gotta make a motion for him to look
Yeah,
into
we
the
have to
salary.
have the secondary one.
Have our administrator go and verify salaries or check them out or ask, do you think?
I'll just keep going as is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make a few phone calls and then I'll come back to you with what that would take to do.
Jerry,
Jerome Bolts, 37668 Moan Beach Trail. To make this really simple, there's a lot of people in town that do not want a full-time fire chief for what it's gonna cost. Why don't you put it on a special ballot when we vote, who wants it and who doesn't? Then everybody gets to say if they want it. That'd be the simple way to keep more people happy.
It's a year and a half out, Jerry.
Well,
I mean,
by the time you get all this set, it's gonna be the first of the year and it'll be only 1 year out. We waited this long, what's another year and a half? He's getting paid regardless. I mean, it would be kind of like a no-brainer to do that, to get everybody's input in the community, not just 5 people. That's my opinion.
Well, my concern with that, Jerry, would be that we lose half the people that have property here do not live here and cannot vote here. So we'd lose 50% of that information. So,
We'll find out if we made a mistake. If we did, we can go back and fix it, This has been kicked around for a long time. So.
Just so you know, there's a lot of people that don't want it.
Yeah, no, I know that.
I've heard of a lot more that don't.
okay,
So a different question.
well,
Now,
Jerry, it depends on to whom you're speaking, I mean,
okay.
do we have a motion, just for clarity, do we have a motion? Like go out and find out what this will take to come up with the salary?
Yeah, so I made that motion.
Yeah.
Second it? Yes, Jackson? All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
move to adjourn.
Okay. Works. Make your motion. Let's get out of
I
here.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.